Most people think retirement requires a seven-figure bank account, but the truth, the average retired household is spending far less than you'd expect. And many are living just fine. Let's break down what retirement really costs and how much you actually need. Welcome back to Simply Money, where we break down personal finance without the fluff. If you're wondering how much you need to retire without working forever, you're in the right place. What's the real cost of retirement? According to the latest Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the average retired household spends about $4,335 per month. That's roughly $52,000 a year. Now remember, this is household spending, not individual. Most retired households have about 1.7 people, typically a couple, so this budget isn't just for one person. So where does all that money go? Housing, which makes up the biggest part, is $1,600 a month. This includes those that still have a mortgage or rent. Then you have taxes, maintenance. Even with a paid-off home, you're still on the hook for insurance, repairs, and maybe an HOA fee. Whether you have a paid-off mortgage, or still paying on a mortgage, or you rent, you have utilities, you got electricity, gas, water, all of those types of things go into housing. So $1,600 a month goes into housing in the average retirement household. The next biggest cost is transportation. That's $670 a month. Yes, many retirees still have car payments, and costs like insurance and maintenance don't go away. And then you have fuel to get wherever you're going. This is one of the reasons why I talk so much about getting out of debt, both your mortgage and your car. That can reduce those numbers drastically. But this is average, so you do have people who continue to have a mortgage and those that continue to have a car payment. So we need to consider that in our equations. The third biggest cost is healthcare. That's $600 a month, whether it's premiums, out-of-pocket cost, anything Medicare doesn't cover. Or if you retire before 65, if you're on your own individual insurance, those premiums and out-of-pocket expenses continue as well. Then you have food, $400 a month at home, $200 a month eating out. That's on average $600 a month that people are spending in retirement on food. And then you have other things, entertainment, clothing, gifts, and all the little things that just add up. That brings you to that $52,000 a year or $4,345 a month. Where are they getting the money? What income do retirees have? Let's talk about income. The average monthly Social Security check is about $2,000. For a retired couple, that's around $4,000, almost enough to cover the average $4,345 in spending. Do you have a pension? Even better. Let's say you're getting a $1,500 a month pension on top of Social Security. Now you're bringing in $5,500 a month, which easily covers the average and gives you a little breathing room. What if you're relying on savings? What if you want to retire early or assume Social Security won't be enough? Perhaps you're not getting the average Social Security. Maybe you get $2,000 and your spouse stayed home or started their career later and they're only getting half of yours, so maybe it's combined $3,000 a month. There's obviously a lot of different scenarios that could be taking place. So what if you're relying on savings? Well, using the 4% rule, and for those of you who have watched my channel, you know that the 4% rule is simply a guideline. It's not a set in stone, cut and dry rule. It's just a guideline. But using that as our guide on this example, which says you can safely withdraw 4% of your retirement portfolio on year one, and then each year after you increase that amount by the amount of inflation. So if inflation is 3%, year two, you increase your withdrawal of 4% and you increase whatever that amount was by 3% of inflation. So you keep up your spending and purchasing power. But with that 4% rule on year one, you would need about $1.3 million saved to generate $52,000 per year. But here's the catch. If you're receiving $48,000 a year from Social Security, two people, then you only need to make up $4,000 difference from your savings. That would require just $100,000 in investments. If you're single, you'd receive closer to $24,000 a year in Social Security. To hit that $52,000 spending level, you'd need to make up the $28,000, which would require about $700,000 saved using the 4% rule. And again, the $52,000 may be higher because you're only a single person, so perhaps that's only $45,000. Again, we don't know your situation, but these are for guidelines, and these are just scenarios to give you an overview of what the possibilities are. But again, a single retiree usually spends less, smaller home, fewer groceries, lower transportation costs. Well, don't forget you have taxes, inflation, and you have to be flexible. A quick note on taxes. Everyone's situation is different. Your tax burden depends on whether your income comes from an IRA, Roth, traditional, or pensions, brokerage accounts, in your state tax rules. But many retirees do end up paying less in taxes than they did during their working years, especially if most of their income comes from Social Security or tax-advantaged accounts, or if they're getting dividends, which are taxed at a lower rate. So there are a lot of different factors that you'll have to consider in your particular situation. Also, the $52,000 figure is an average. Some people spend a lot less, whether by choice or necessity. Others spend far more, especially wealthier retirees who travel often or maintain second homes. So how much do you need? It all depends on your lifestyle, where you live, and your income sources. Let's say you have $500,000 saved, a Social Security income of $48,000 a year. If you're married, you could safely withdraw $20,000 a year from your portfolio and live on nearly $70,000 annually. That's well above the average. And remember, the average household across all age groups spends about $77,000 per year. So yes, most people spend less in retirement and they can live well doing it. Part of the reason why that $77,000 versus $52,000 of retired people is because those spending $77,000, perhaps they're still raising children, they have kids in school, they have extracurricular activity events, they have more mouths to feed, perhaps they're still paying on a mortgage, have multiple car payments, maybe they're still paying off student loan debts. There's so many different factors. But as you retire, as you get older, your expenses decrease. If you can focus on removing debt, those expenses decrease even further. Most people don't need $1 million to retire. If you're planning for Social Security, maybe you have a pension and are okay adjusting your spending, retirement might be closer than you think. How much do you think you'll need? Are you aiming above the average or planning to keep things simple? How close to retirement are you, or do you think you are? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Simply Money for weekly videos breaking down the real numbers behind personal finance. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and I appreciate you joining me, and we'll see you next time on Simply Money.